What it's like as a computer science student with Henry Quillin.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast and deliver quality and to run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. The podcast is sponsored by ClearMeasure, which is a full-service software architecture and engineering firm that serves companies building mission-critical software systems. Quick announcement, we're in the second year of my architect forums. You can sign up for the next session on the website. And if you lead a software team and are looking to collaborate with peer architect leaders, then just sign up at the link in the show notes or go to clearmeasure.com. And I've also launched a new software executive leadership forum for technical executives who oversee software engineering groups, CTOs, VPs of engineering. If you oversee software development in your company, or if you would like your boss to be a part of one of these forums, then just go ahead and sign up as well. And it's going to focus on topics specific to management leadership for software engineering departments. And of course, for those looking for Programming with Palermo, my video podcast, you can just search for it in any of the directories and you'll be able to find it. My returning guest on the show today is Henry Quillin. He was back with us on episode 183 in early 2022. He is a current student in the Canfield Computer Science and Business Honors Program at the University of Texas at Austin and a software engineer intern at Bank of America in New York City. And in general, he likes building things and he's interested in software development, entrepreneurship, and blockchain and crypto. He's done several internships and projects and other contracts. And he's previously earned the rank of Eagle Scout in the Boy Scouts of America. And he always has several projects going on. And when not buried in VS Code or books, he enjoys weightlifting and cooking and listening to podcasts. And he's currently helping artists monetize their scrapped music as the CTO of Scraps. And you can check out his website at henryquillin.me. And so, Henry, welcome back to the show. How are you, sir?
Doing great, Jeffrey. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, great to have you back. And listeners, if you did not check out the previous episode 183, go back in the archives and listen to that, because that was the point in time when, Henry, you were just basically finishing high school and about to go into the University of Texas at Austin as a computer science student. And now we're catching up with you and you're halfway through, you're starting your junior year. I want to ask you about that. But before we dive into it, what did you kind of expect this period to be when we talked last, when you finished up high school, and what things played out like you thought they would and what things surprised you?
Yeah, so great question. I mean, I remember being in high school and around the time that we talked, I was definitely kind of very singular focused on, what I was doing and the path that I wanted to create for myself. I had a lot of internships in high school, as we talked about. And so for me, first of all, college was kind of a tough decision, actually. I had some offers to go just straight into working full time right after high school. And so, it was honestly like a decision for me. And I definitely think that I've had a little bit of a mindset shift coming into college. And I think that has a lot to do with, just the social environment of college, right? It's, in high school, at least for me, I would come home and there would be nothing for me to do but really, focus on my work and, my applications and, thinking about how I can set up my future. But when you get to college, man, there's so much to do. And I kind of decided that I was going to take some time to really enjoy my time there. And so I would say, when I was applying to colleges, the main thing I was looking for was like, all right, what are the career opportunities from this college? What companies recruit at this college? And getting into college, I realized it's so much more than that. And the value of college is so much more expansive than, just a tool to get a better job. Um, and so I would say, I really see college now as kind of a really beautiful time and place to exist in the in between of, being a adolescent and an adult. And it's something that, I wouldn't trade for anything. So I would say, yeah, I mean, to your question of how is it different? Well, for me, the main difference is, I wasn't expecting such a rich experience in college, and you know, basically learning that I have many more interests besides just computer science and entrepreneurship, and that it's okay to not always be working 24/7. And so for me, that's been a really important thing. I think I was starting to maybe reach a little bit of a burnout, coming out of high school. And so I think, yeah, college has been great for kind of, recentering myself, being able to enjoy life a little bit more, really look for those kind of rich experiences while also being surrounded by people who have, similar interests to you, similar goals, similar career paths, and also, the structure of being in that, academic environment where they're kind of laying out a path for you and supporting you along the way.
Mm-hmm. You went into your university as a freshman already having quite a bit more experience than the average incoming freshman. And we talked through that. I mean, you were slinging .NET code as a high school senior and running Azure DevOps builds and doing pull requests and deployments to Azure, even as a high school senior. But I just want to kind of talk through, as you met other freshmen that are in this computer science program, and certainly, UT Austin is one of the well-known universities, not just in Texas but around the country. And so you're going into this university with a good reputation as a computer science student right from the bat. And I think the average incoming freshman probably hadn't done as many software projects as you had coming in. But did you find that to be true, or were there, half of the other incoming freshmen that were just as far along as you were?
So I will say yes and no. I definitely think I had a lot more practical experience. I knew what, AWS was, and all of these kind of developer tools, and, the difference between full stack, front end, back end, all these kind of practical, basically practical knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say in terms of like the core computer science concepts, that's something that I'm actually very grateful for, that college focuses on, because that's something that I really didn't have. I kind of skipped past that in trying
Mm-hmm.
in, kind of jumping headfirst into the fire, so to speak, with these internships. You kind of just have to learn as you go. And as you do that, you do kind of miss some of the fundamentals, which I don't think that that's a bad thing. Sometimes I think that you don't need to learn, everything there is to know about a topic. But I would say in that regard, I didn't have that much of a leg up in terms of some of these classes that were more theory focused, like, algorithms or, data structures. And so, yeah, I would say where my leg up was in my knowledge of, like, first of all, like the recruiting process, because I had already done it, I'd already worked at kind of a large tech company at Coinbase. But yeah, I mean, I definitely, I didn't feel like special in any regard in terms of, working through these classes. I wasn't like breezing through this stuff. It is very difficult. There's a lot of math, a lot of problem solving, a lot of critical thinking, and it definitely challenged me. It 100% was a challenge for me. Granted, I am in the kind of a little bit of a more prestigious program than the typical computer science degree at UT. But even those students, I mean, a lot of them had a lot of projects coming in, or some kind
Mm-hmm.
of experience. And I think that's just because UT is a select school, especially for computer science. And so it is kind of tough to just jump into a degree like that without having any prior experience on your application. And so, I think a lot of people had done computer science before in some way. But yeah, I mean, I think that I felt like I had a leg up when it came to actually like building projects and things that were going to be deployed, and talking about like technologies that are actually getting used, and maybe not so much when, thinking about some of these core computer science fundamentals, which I really think is what the computer science degree is focused on, right? It's difficult for these large universities to keep adapting their degree program to the new emerging technologies because, as
Mm-hmm.
computer science is such an evolving field. I mean, every year, especially with this AI stuff, I mean, every year there's new stuff that no one would have expected. And so when you get a computer science degree, largely what you're getting is a degree in theory, and then the actual practical applications that come out of that, you are kind of responsible for learning yourself on the job, which is mostly done through internships.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's remember back, if you can, your freshman year, and certainly there's some university basics that you have to get through, but what types of computer science courses were in your freshman year? Just so the listeners who are kind of thinking that they might go this path kind of get a feel for what's expected, and even what level of math you had to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so freshman year, let's see, we had data structures, which data structures is pretty approachable. And we actually skipped the intro. There's like an intro to coding or intro to Python course that I think the normal computer science majors will take.
Mm-hmm.
But being in the dual degree program, I guess, skipped that and went straight into data structures, which data structures was definitely very helpful because it's, you learn a lot about, the core, kind of fundamental pieces of knowledge that you need to know to be able to work with a programming language, so
Mm-hmm.
arrays, hash maps, trees, not just saying, okay, in Python, to make a hash map, it's just a curly bracket, but actually like, how do you build a hash map from scratch? Things like that. So really like diving deep into how these data structures actually work. And I will say that was something that going into, I had done some interview prep, like leak code type algorithm questions. And, those are known like data structures and algorithms
Mm-hmm.
questions. And so I was like, okay, I've done this before. This is not going to be a problem. But, what I hadn't realized is that, yeah, you don't know actually how these data structures work at a fundamental level.
Right.
So that was still very challenging course for me. And then there is discrete math. And so this is a computer science course that I think is pretty common to most curriculums. And it's completely different than any type of math that you've ever done. And it's more like kind of logic problems. And so at the start, it's like, if this, then that. And then you basically combine a bunch of these statements together, and you've got to think like, okay, what is the end result here? And it then evolves to kind of more statistics in a sense. And then you get to like combinatorics and things. And I will say that was one of the most challenging courses, not the most challenging, that was operating systems, but that was very challenging for me because I've never been a huge math guy. And it's just, it'll challenge you in a way that if you haven't taken anything in high school like that before, in a way that you haven't been challenged. I mean, I remember staying up, pulling multiple all-nighters with my best friend trying to work through these problems. And it's like, you'll get a problem set of
Mm-hmm.
like 6 problems. And I remember the TA at the beginning of the semester was like, okay, how many problems per problem set? And she was like, oh, it'll be like, 6 to 8 problems. I was like, okay, sweet. Like, that's not too bad. And then
Mm-hmm.
she's like, oh, and it'll take, 8 to 10 hours per problem set. And I was like, and I remember being like, there's no way, like, I will definitely be able to figure it out, in a quicker amount of time. But nope. I mean, it really is challenging. So yeah, those were kind of the freshman year courses that we had to do.
Okay. Okay. And
And then, sorry, I forgot
sure.
about computer architecture. That comes second semester. Computer architecture is where you kind of dive deep into like the lower level stuff, and that's kind of a prerequisite for operating systems, which is
Mm-hmm.
where you go super low level. And operating systems is like, no debugging. You don't get to know, there's no print statements. I mean, if it's not working, like you've got to search every single line because it could be the tiniest little thing.
Yeah.
And that was seriously like a full-time job, operating systems. It was 30 to 40 hours a week of just the problem sets. So it was complete. I mean, they wouldn't let you take more than like 12 hours while you're taking that unless you get like approval, because it's so challenging. But it was also, that was one of the most rewarding courses because it was, I remember like, we'd do a lecture and it would just make like no sense. And it was this guy, this old, gray haired guy who's kind of a titan of industry and didn't use any technology at all. It was just a whiteboard, didn't record any of the lectures. And it was from 7 to 9, 2 hours long. And you better hope you don't fall asleep, because if you fall asleep for 10 minutes, you're going to be in trouble, because everything he says is just, you have to hang on to every word. But it was so rewarding because you'd go from like this concept that just didn't make any sense, and then you have to figure out how to use it in the project. And we were basically building a operating system from scratch.
Nice.
So an ARM operating system, and every week you build upon what you built last week. And at the end, we had an working operating system, and then we had like a final project where everyone would break out into groups, and you would take like different components of this of the operating system, and then you'd all come together and combine it. So I was working on mouse and keyboard input, and another group would work on graphics and audio. And so that course was the most challenging, but also the most rewarding, because you go from just being like, how can anyone understand this, to like, wow, I built an operating system. So
yeah.
Many thanks to our podcast sponsor, ClearMeasure. ClearMeasure is a software architecture company that empowers clients' development teams to be self-sufficient, moving fast, delivering quality, and running their systems with confidence. Whether starting a new project or developing new technologies or techniques, ClearMeasure sets up your team to deliver world-class results. Learn more at www.clearmeasure.com. ClearMeasure, empowering software delivery. ClearMeasure is also happy to be a sponsor of the video podcast, Programming with Palermo. Watch, learn, and program alongside Chief Architect Jeffrey Palermo. Videos are added weekly and available on syndicated locations supporting video podcast, or by visiting palermo.network. Tune in today.
Now, any chance that operating system is in your GitHub account? Like, does it run on a Raspberry Pi? You said ARM.
Yeah, so it's not, because they, are pretty secure when it comes to like sharing code and stuff.
Oh,
and
so it's not something that you're allowed to share even after the course is over?
Yeah, because then someone could always just look it up and then find it on my GitHub.
Gotcha. What language? What language did you make the operating system in?
So it was in C.
Okay.
Yeah.
No assembly.
C. And the professor, we'd work with assembly as well. So it was like some of the weeks, we would have to be implementing the code mostly in assembly. And then, but there was also this layer of abstraction that we could use with C. There's some guardrails set up by the professor, so that we're not like fully, kind of just left out to figure it out on our own. But that was tough. I mean, you'd start the project, and you'd read like the problem description, and it would just I remember just being like, what? Like, what am I supposed to do here? And so it's another piece of it is like, you have to learn how to collaborate. Because if I had to do that course alone, I would have failed 100%. Most people would have probably failed. We would spend our entire evening in the basement of the computer science building in like a group of like 8 or 10. And everyone knew that was the spot. Our program's pretty small. We only have like 40 people in our program. So everyone kind of knows everyone. And that's one thing that was nice about my experience. But it was like, no one would work on it on their own. Everyone would be working on it together, because you run into so many problems, and everyone was so eager to also help other people. That was another thing that you start to notice about being in a computer science curriculum is there's kind of it's a nice culture, at least at UT. I have noticed many people are willing to help.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting juxtaposition. 40 people in the actual course program in a university that has over 50,000 total students sprawled everywhere. So yeah, it's a massive
Absolutely.
university,
Yeah.
but your corner of that university is a pretty tight knit community, it sounds like.
Well, that's why I chose UT. I was actually going to go to Rice in Houston, and then I got into CSB, and it was a pretty easy decision for me there. So yeah, it's definitely nice having a small kind of cohort. That's another thing. When you're in college, you really want to make sure to kind of find your group and early
Mm-hmm.
on, because when you get to junior, senior year, everything kind of settles down. And freshman year, everyone's so eager to make friends, and then you make your friends, and then you lose some friends, and then make some more friends. But you usually, you kind of, if you have a good solid group, um, that's like extremely valuable. And um, you know,
Mm-hmm.
not just for college, but even after college. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I also joined a fraternity at UT. I think, making sure to take advantage of those opportunities to meet people is key to having a good experience in college.
Okay. So talk to me about housing, because it varies so much. And did you live on campus, close to campus, your first 2 years? What was that like?
Freshman year, I was in the honors quad, which was on campus. So tiny little dorm. Um, Unfortunately, the honors quad isn't any nicer than the other dorms. It's just
Mm-hmm.
all the nerds packed into one place.
Yeah.
So which was nice because most of the people in CSB lived there, so we would be able to work together in the main room and stuff. But yeah, so freshman year I was in the dorm. It's fun. It's fun for a semester, and then and then you're like, oh gosh, I got to go back to that smelly dorm. And then by the end of freshman year, you're like, all right, ready to be in an apartment. And I don't know if other schools are like this, but at UT, if you're not a freshman, you don't live in a dorm unless you're like, working for the dorm. But yeah, so now last year I was in a apartment, and this year I'll be in that same apartment, just a little bit off campus with 4 suite mates. So
Okay. So it sounds like it's important to have roommates in the
yes,
apartment.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think so. I know people who kind of live alone, and um, especially at UTU, it's like such a big school
Mm-hmm.
where even if you have like, I mean, I met so many people freshman year. Like I remember being like kind of almost like overwhelmed, like, oh my God, I've got like too many friends.
Mm-hmm.
But sophomore year, you move off campus and you start to see people less and less. And so you want to have, you really do, you want to have like a tight group of people where you kind of have some activity where you're always seeing them on a recurrent, you have an excuse to see them.
Mm-hmm.
And living with your best friends is one of the best way to do that. I mean, I live with my 3 best friends in college, so
Nice.
I would definitely recommend having roommates.
There's quite a few people that have a struggle of figuring out what they want their major to be. The thought is, well, I know I want to go straight to a university after high school, but I don't know what I want my major to be. You didn't struggle with that. You knew already, hey, look, I'm going into computers. I love programming. I want to work in this field. And so you had it figured out. That was not an issue for you. But now that you're halfway through, is it a resounding, oh yes, you know that you were right and you're so glad that you went down this path? Or are you looking at how broad the field is and still trying to make some decisions about what pathway to take?
So yeah, so to your first point, people who kind of are like, oh man, I don't know what I want to do. I will say the best remedy for that is getting experience, just even if it's for a couple weeks, like just to shadowing, like anything you can do to actually see what that job is like is so valuable. I wanted to be an architect and coming into high school, and I I got the opportunity to work at an architecture firm, worked there for a year and a half, and I realized I do not want to be an architect. And
Mm,
I'm really glad I did that, because if I didn't, I would probably be an architecture major right now.
mm-hmm.
So, and you could read about it, you can listen to podcasts, and YouTube videos on it, but you're not going to know if you want to do something until you actually try it. So my best advice for like people who don't really know what they want to do, what major they want to do, is just try to get some hands-on work experience any way you can. Unpaid, it doesn't matter. I started out doing unpaid internships, and usually they'll start paying you if they like what you're doing. They'll start paying you. But so yeah, that's my advice for people who don't know who are, I guess, conflicted as to what path they want to go down. And then second question was, am I glad that I went with computer science? So yes, I am definitely glad that I'm still doing computer science. I think I went into the computer science and business degree with not really the most, or with not much enthusiasm for the business part. That was kind of like, I'll just be part of this prestigious degree and then I'll just do the business, because I'm now very glad that I have a business degree under my belt, because I do think it opens, a lot of doors for me down the line. And I've realized that there's so many different paths you can take with a computer science degree. A lot of people will start doing join as a software engineer, 1, 2, 3, and then they'll get either pivot to maybe product management, or they'll go into project management, or they'll go into software management. A lot of these adjacent and kind of vertical positions require management skills and business skills. So I'm so grateful that I am also getting a business degree. But yeah, I still love coding, and I think of all the tasks that I could be doing for 8 hours a day for however many years, coding would be the one that I would go with for sure. So
That's awesome to have found something that you're passionate about. I hired one person a number of years ago, right out of college, who just finished a bachelor's degree in computer science. And then in the second month of work, he said, I can't do this. I'm staring at a computer screen all day. This is not for me. And my heart broke for him because he'd gone through 4 years of education, and now he realized that he literally didn't like one of the most basic activities, which is, you're in front of the computer screen for a long time at a stretch. So that's great. Going forward, let's see, I've lost count of how many internships that you've actually done. But as we close up, for people who maybe they're entering their freshman year as a computer science student, or maybe thinking about how should they think? What have you learned about internships, and how should incoming university freshmen think about internships? Is it something that you do after your junior year, or how do you think about those?
I think internships are the most important part of getting an education. Frankly, I think one of the big value adds of college is you get 4 more years of internships. And I think internships are great because they're short term. You're not committed to something, and you can, there's a lot of flexibility to, try different, industries out. And so, okay, the best way of going about like thinking about internships, when should you try to get an internship, is the answer is like as early as you can. I think people underestimate how much value they can add to a team. And I know I definitely did. I remember being in going into high school, and I was doing like Code Academy and stuff. And even right before like my first, it was unpaid, but my first, I guess, internship, you could say, for computer science, I remember being like, there's no way I can actually add any value to this company. Like these, like, I was just expecting that people could like, type, super fast, and like code would come out, and I was like, I can't do that. But you realize that it's so much more methodical, and a lot of it is like learning as you go. And you don't know everything. You learn it while you're on the job. And that doesn't mean that you're not, just because you don't know it doesn't mean that you can't figure it out and be of value. So my first piece of advice is try to get an internship as early as you can. I think if you don't have a lot of experience, the best way to do that is cold emailing. So just find a list of startups and smaller, mid-sized companies in your area. Definitely leverage your network and just send out a ton of emails basically saying, hey, I don't have a whole lot of experience, but this is what I can do. This is what I know. And, tell them you're willing to work for free. Usually if they end up hiring you, you'll work for free for a little bit and then it'll transition to a paid position. If you have experience, so, coming into college, I already had some experience. If we're, looking at software specifically, the kind of hiring process for software engineering is as follows, right? It'll start usually end of summer. So internship applications for next summer have been open since like end of July, and then they'll keep opening up until usually November. That's kind of like the first kind of round, and then there'll be a second basically a second hiring season after the break. But if you're thinking about, let's say you're a sophomore and you want to get an internship for the summer, definitely you need to start applying really early on. And also while you're doing that, you need to be preparing for the interviews because, that is kind of a great filter, so to speak, is the technical interview. And so for me, LeetCode has been a great resource, just practicing the data structures and algorithms problems. Those are, most of the time what you're going to get. And it's very difficult. So you want to make sure that you understand the theory behind it first. Make sure you have a really good understanding of basic data structures, arrays, hash maps, and how to use them. Then once you kind of have that understanding, then you want to go into, looking at the different types of problems. So, tree problems, sorting, dynamic programming, and basically just try to get like some good understanding of what these problems look like so you can kind of identify them. Once you do that, then you want to get into just practice. And so just, doing a bunch of problems, trying to use spaced repetition. So, after a certain period of time, going back and reviewing what you've already done so that you can kind of lock it into your brain. That is the most difficult part about getting a high-paying internship in tech is the technical interview. And it's something that I'm still, battling with, and I'm still, on that kind of grind, still trying to be prepared for that. But the earlier that you can start, the better. And if you are confident in your ability to pass those interviews, you will have a huge leg up over your peers. So, yeah, that's my advice for people in tech looking to do internships.
Nice. And last question. So this past summer, you just finished up an internship with Bank of America in New York City. Did you go in knowing the technology that they asked you to use, or did you just have to learn it all first week and figure it out? What was that like?
Yeah, so I was working with Python. The team that I was on mainly used Python. It was a data science and AI team. And so I had used Python. I was familiar with Python. I was not familiar with Streamlit, which is the UI library that I was using to build my application, or Scikit, which is a natural language processing library that I used a lot. And so, yeah, I mean, you just kind of learn it as you go. You got to sift through documentation. Nowadays with ChatGPT and these AIs like Claude, it's so much easier to learn new technology. I mean, you can drop the documentation into like the context of the chatbot, and then as you go, you can kind of ask it questions. How does this work? How does that work? Give me like a basic template that I can work off of. So nowadays, it is totally a non-issue in my opinion of whether the technology that you're working with or not, as long as you have some experience in coding and know how to think, you'll be able to get the job done for sure. yeah, I mean, AI is just totally opening up so many opportunities, making it so much easier to learn within the tech space, and also, really in anything. I mean, it's useful for all of my courses. I've been using it. I think if you're not using these AI tools, you're going to be falling behind.
All right. So you mentioned, listener, you mentioned Claude, you mentioned ChatGPT. Are there any others that roll off your tongue that fall into the category? Hey, you need to be using these.
Yeah. So there's other ones. There's like Grok, which is the Twitter one. That's more like supposed to be kind of like a free speech type chatbot with not as many restrictions. I found that one to be not great. Really, the only ones that I use is Claude and ChatGPT.
Okay.
And then there's a bunch of tools that are like have specific use cases that are just kind of wrappers for these. But I've found that everything that they do is honestly easier if you just work directly with the main chatbot itself, so ChatGPT or Claude. So yeah, I mean, for me, those have been immensely helpful, and you can get the pro versions for like $20 a month, and that has been like the best investment I've ever made.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, I run into people who don't use them, and it's like, in my opinion, I think it's a huge opportunity that they're missing.
Awesome. Well, Henry, thanks so much for coming back on the podcast and sharing with us what the halfway mark of computer science and business at UT Austin. Yeah, great to have you back on the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Jeffrey, and I hope to talk soon.
Awesome. And until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.